Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive. And you know what that means. Taking a concept and really getting in there. And today we're going to be talking about fertility and the chakras.
Okay.
And specifically, we're going to be using a blog post from Auratherapy as our main source.
Yeah.
And Auratherapy approaches this whole idea of fertility from a very holistic perspective,
Yeah.
really focused on this idea of energy and how we can heal our aura and our chakras. So this is going to be a really interesting deep dive, I think, for anyone, but especially for those of you out there who are maybe interested in trying to conceive.
Definitely.
Or just kind of interested in this whole energy work thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight that even if you're not on a fertility journey, this deep dive is still for you because we're talking about the chakras, which are energy centers that impact every aspect of our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they can affect our physical health, but also our emotional and even our spiritual well-being. So this is really for anyone who's interested in tapping into their full potential.
Exactly.
So before we really get into it, I think it's helpful to just kind of briefly explain what chakras are.
Yeah.
For those who might not be familiar.
Okay.
And we've talked about chakras on the show before, but just to kind of recap.
Yeah.
Chakras are these swirling energy centers in our body, and they're not physical things. You can't point to them, but they're these energy points that correspond to different areas of our physical body,
Right.
Our emotions, our mind, our spirit, and they're really important in a lot of different spiritual traditions.
Definitely. And there are 7 main chakras, and each one has a specific color, vibration, and function.
Yeah.
And they run along the spine, from the base of the spine all the way up to the crown of the head.
Yes.
And when they're balanced, energy flows freely throughout our system, and we feel vibrant and alive.
Yes.
But when they're blocked or sluggish, it can lead to all sorts of problems.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about fertility specifically, we're going to be focusing a lot on the sacral chakra today, which is located below the navel.
Yes.
And it's considered to be the energy center for the reproductive system.
Yeah. And not just the reproductive system, but also our emotions, creativity, and our ability to experience pleasure and connection.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about that juicy, life-affirming energy. Yeah.
So, the blog post that we're using today, it talks about how an imbalanced sacral chakra can manifest in a lot of different ways.
Well,
physically, emotionally, all these different areas. And some of the signs that they mention are things like difficulty expressing emotions, menstrual irregularities, and even a lack of joy or that kind of zest for life.
Yeah, that spark, that feeling of aliveness.
Exactly. So it's not just about the physical act of conceiving.
Right.
It's about our whole energetic state. Exactly. It's about feeling open, receptive, and connected to our creative energy.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So one thing that I found really interesting in this blog post was this idea that sometimes the sacral chakra isn't actually the root cause of the problem.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
It's sometimes it's actually another chakra that's out of whack.
Okay.
And that's creating this energetic block that's affecting the sacral chakra. And one of the examples that they give is the solar plexus chakra.
Oh, interesting. So the solar plexus, which is associated with personal power and confidence, can actually impact fertility.
Yeah, and this totally blew my mind because when I think of fertility, I immediately go to the sacral chakra.
Right.
But the solar plexus is all the way up here, above the navel.
Yes.
And so it's what does this have to do with, my reproductive system?
Yeah.
But the blog post explains that when our solar plexus is depleted or blocked, it can actually create an energetic blockage between the sacral chakra and the heart chakra. Wow, so it's like a domino effect. One chakra being out of balance can impact the others.
Exactly. And this can affect our ability to connect deeply with others, and even potentially our fertility.
Okay, so tell me this. Why would the solar plexus being blocked affect our ability to connect with others?
Well, the solar plexus is all about our personal power, right? That feeling of being in control of our lives.
Yeah.
And feeling confident and capable.
Right.
And when that chakra is blocked, it can lead to feelings of self-doubt, insecurity, maybe even a fear of intimacy.
Yeah, we're not showing up as our full selves.
Exactly. And those emotional blocks can create barriers in our relationships, which in turn can affect our ability to conceive.
Yeah, it makes sense. When we're not feeling confident and empowered in ourselves, it's harder to open up to that level of intimacy.
Yeah, and the blog post kind of explains it in this way. It's like when our solar plexus is weak, we might feel like we're constantly pushing a boulder uphill. Like we're just like exhausted and depleted.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly the most fertile ground for creating life.
No, definitely not. We need that vital energy to flow freely.
Exactly.
So how do we keep our solar plexus energized and prevent those blocks?
Well, the blog post suggests a few things. They talk about affirmations, which are basically like positive statements that we repeat to ourselves.
Yeah.
To kind of reprogram our subconscious mind.
Right.
And some examples of affirmations for the solar plexus would be things like, I am powerful.
Yeah.
I am in control of my energy.
I like that.
I am worthy of love and abundance. And it's like you're basically reminding yourself of your own strength and capability.
Yes, like giving ourselves a pep talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they also talk about visualization, which is basically like using your imagination to create a mental picture of what you want to manifest.
Okay.
So in this case, it might be visualizing yourself radiating confidence and power, and maybe like seeing a bright yellow light emanating from your solar plexus.
Yeah, I love that.
And they also talk about aromatherapy.
Of course.
Which is using essential oils to support our emotional and physical well-being.
Right.
And for the solar plexus, they recommend energizing oils like lemon and ginger.
Oh, I love those. Those are great for boosting energy and motivation. Okay. So we've covered the sacral chakra, the solar plexus. What about the heart chakra? Yeah. How does that fit into all of this?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Because the heart chakra is all about love, right?
Yes, compassion, connection.
And it might seem like, well, what does love have to do with fertility? But the blog post makes this really interesting point about how a blocked heart chakra can actually create emotional barriers that can affect our ability to conceive.
So it's not just about the physical aspect of fertility. It's also about our emotional state.
Exactly. And they talk about how a blocked heart chakra can lead to feelings of unworthiness, self-criticism, maybe even a fear of intimacy.
Okay, so if we're carrying around all of that emotional baggage, it can make it harder to open ourselves up to the possibility of creating life.
Exactly.
It's like we're closing ourselves off. Yeah.
And so the blog post emphasizes the importance of self-love in this whole process of like awakening our fertility.
Okay, but what does self-love actually look like in this context?
Well, it's about like treating ourselves with kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
Accepting ourselves for who we are. And really believing that we are worthy of love and happiness.
And when we cultivate that self-love, it creates a more fertile ground within ourselves for creating the life we desire.
Exactly. So it's not just about focusing on the physical aspects of fertility. It's about addressing our emotional and spiritual well-being as well.
Yeah, it's a holistic approach.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I think that's what I love about this whole approach to fertility is that it's not just about, like, you taking supplements or, like doing all the physical things. Right. It's about really looking at ourselves as whole beings.
Yes, and recognizing that everything is interconnected.
Exactly. And so the blog post goes on to talk about the spiritual chakras.
Oh, okay. The third eye and the crown chakra.
And how those play a role in this whole process of like healing and balance.
So how do they tie into fertility?
Well, they talk about this idea of like third eye dominance versus crown chakra dominance.
Okay, that's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, me neither. So third eye dominance is like when you're really in tune with your intuition and you trust your gut feelings.
Okay.
And crown chakra dominance is more about surrendering to a higher power, trusting that the universe has a plan.
Right.
And so the blog post suggests that like finding a balance between these two can create a really powerful mind-body-spirit connection. That makes sense. So it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about finding that harmony between our own inner wisdom and that sense of trust in something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And, I think that's a really important point, especially when we're talking about fertility, because it can be such a challenging journey. And it's easy to get caught up in like the physical aspects of it.
Yeah.
But it's so important to remember that there's this like spiritual dimension to it as well.
Definitely. And that spiritual dimension can offer us a sense of peace and surrender.
Yeah, and I think that can be really helpful when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
Absolutely. When we trust that we're being guided and supported, it can make the journey feel less daunting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've talked about all these different chakras, but how do we actually know like which chakra might need attention?
Yeah, how do we know where to focus our energy?
Right, because it can be a little overwhelming to think about like all these different energy centers.
Yeah, like where do we even begin?
Right.
Right. So that's where this concept of referred balancing comes in.
Okay, tell me about that.
And so this is basically the idea that like sometimes the chakra we think is the problem might not actually be the root cause.
Oh, interesting.
Like it's like having a headache and assuming it's stress.
Yeah.
But maybe it's actually like dehydration or eye strain.
Right. So it's like treating the symptom instead of the underlying cause.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the blog post gives the example of like a low sacral chakra,
Okay.
potentially stemming from an overactive third eye or a blocked solar plexus.
So it's like that domino effect we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it's all interconnected.
Right. We need to look at the whole system,
Yeah.
not just focus on one isolated area.
Exactly. And, you know, I think this is such a powerful reminder because it's so easy to get caught up in like fixing the symptoms, but it's so important to address the root cause.
Exactly.
You know, if we want to create lasting change, so, you know, we've talked about how to kind of like identify which chakra might need attention.
Yeah, but how do we actually balance them?
Right. Like, what are some practical steps we can take to like awaken our fertility?
Yeah.
So the blog post lays out 5 key practices.
Okay. Right.
And these are breathwork, aromatherapy,
Right.
meditation with intention,
Interesting.
affirmations, and aura readings.
Wow. So that's a pretty comprehensive approach.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool because it's like a combination of like ancient wisdom and modern techniques.
Yeah.
So let's break these down a little bit. Okay. We've already talked a little bit about breathwork and aromatherapy.
Yeah.
But I think it's worth mentioning again because they're both so powerful and they're both really easy to incorporate into your daily routine.
Definitely.
So breathwork is basically like consciously controlling your breath. And there are different techniques you can use, like, but the basic idea is that by changing the way you breathe, you can actually change your energy.
Okay, so it's like we're literally breathing life force into our bodies.
Exactly. And aromatherapy is using essential oils to support our emotional and physical well-being.
Right.
And the blog post recommends specific oils for fertility.
Okay.
Like clary sage, yang ylang. And this one might surprise you, orange.
Orange?
Really?
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Right. But it's all about like that kind of like bright, vibrant energy.
Cool. So many options.
Yeah. So what about meditation with intention?
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So it's basically like taking your meditation practice and like giving it a specific focus.
Okay.
So in this case, it might be visualizing energy flowing to your sacral chakra and like awakening your creativity and vitality.
Okay, so it's not just about emptying our minds. It's about actively directing our energy towards a specific outcome.
Exactly. And affirmations, basically like positive statements that we repeat to ourselves to kind of reprogram our subconscious mind.
Right.
And some examples of affirmations for fertility would be things like, I am open to creation and joy.
I like that.
My body is a fertile vessel.
Beautiful.
I trust in the divine timing of my journey. And so it's like you're speaking to your body with love and encouragement.
Yes, and believing in its ability to create life.
Exactly. And finally, we have aura readings.
Okay.
And this is basically like getting a personalized energy map that can reveal potential blockages or imbalances.
It can help us understand why we might be experiencing certain emotions or physical symptoms.
Yeah, and it can also like guide us towards specific healing practices.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's like we're getting personalized guidance on how to optimize our energy.
Exactly. And so, you know, this is a lot of information. It's like 5 different practices.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming.
Yeah. And so the blog post emphasizes the importance of like starting small and trusting the process. It's not about like overhauling your entire life overnight.
Right.
It's about finding those little things that bring you joy and make you feel good.
Yeah.
And incorporating them into your daily routine.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about making self-care a priority.
Exactly. And they also encourage readers to check out the Auratherapy website and their book for more in-depth guidance.
Cool. So there's even more to explore.
Yeah, and they even offer a discount on their Sacral Chakra Balancing Oil blend
Nice.
for our listeners.
Awesome. So that's a great resource for anyone who wants to dive deeper into this.
Yeah, definitely. So, we've covered a lot of ground here, but I think the key takeaway
Okay.
is that fertility is influenced by like this really complex interplay of physical, emotional, and spiritual energies.
Definitely.
And understanding the chakras can offer a really unique perspective on this whole journey.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that we're not just physical beings.
Right.
We're also energetic beings.
Exactly. And that our energy plays a vital role in our overall well-being. So, before we move on to the next part of this deep dive,
Okay.
I just want to like kind of recap what we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
We talked about the sacral chakra, which is like the energy center for the reproductive system.
Yeah.
We talked about how an imbalanced sacral chakra can manifest in a lot of different ways.
Right.
Physically, emotionally, like all these different areas.
Yeah.
And we talked about how sometimes it's not actually the sacral chakra that's the root cause of the problem.
Right.
It might be another chakra that's out of whack.
Like the solar plexus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we talked about the 5 key practices that we can use to balance our chakras.
Right.
Breathwork, aromatherapy, meditation with intention, affirmations, and aura readings.
Okay.
And so in the next part of this deep dive,
Okay.
we're going to be talking more about like the specific ways that these practices can support our fertility.
I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be good.
Awesome.
Stay tuned.
Okay. It's like this. Sometimes the most obvious answer isn't the right one. We might think our sacral chakra is sluggish, but it could be an overactive third eye draining its energy.
Oh, so it's not always about focusing on one chakra in isolation. We need to look at the whole system, right?
Precisely. It's like a beautiful, intricate web.
Huh.
And that brings us to another fascinating point. The blog makes the impact of our overall lifestyle on our chakras and, in turn, our fertility.
So it's not just about meditation and essential oils. It's about looking at the bigger picture of how we're living our lives.
Absolutely. The blog touches on how our modern lifestyle, with its constant demands and pressures, can throw our energy out of whack. We're bombarded with information deadlines and expectations, and it's no wonder our solar plexus, our center of personal power, can feel drained.
It's like we're running on fumes, pushing ourselves to the limit, and then wondering why we feel depleted and out of balance.
That's exactly it. And as we discussed earlier, a depleted solar plexus can have a ripple effect on other chakras, including the sacral chakra, which plays such a vital role in fertility.
This makes me think about how often we prioritize productivity over well-being. It's like we've forgotten how to slow down, listen to our bodies, and replenish our energy.
It's a really important point, and the blog emphasizes that self-care isn't a luxury. It's essential for maintaining balance and vitality in all areas of our lives, including fertility.
So what are some practical steps we can take to nurture our energy and create a more supportive environment for our chakras to thrive?
It starts with making conscious choices that honor our well-being. Setting boundaries is crucial. We need to learn to say no to things that drain us and yes to things that nourish us. It's about creating space for rest, relaxation, and activities that bring us joy.
I think a lot of us struggle with setting boundaries, especially in today's always-on culture. It's like we feel guilty for taking time for ourselves.
I hear that a lot. But think of it this way, when we're depleted and running on empty, we're not able to show up fully for ourselves or the people we care about. By prioritizing our well-being, we're actually becoming more capable and energized in all areas of our lives.
That's a really empowering way to look at it. It's not selfish. It's an act of self-love and ultimately allows us to give more to the world. What about nutrition? Does the blog touch on how the foods we eat impact our chakras and fertility?
It definitely does. The blog talks about the importance of nourishing our bodies with whole, nutrient-rich foods that support hormonal balance and overall vitality. They specifically mention the importance of getting enough healthy fats, which are crucial for hormone production.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And also makes me think about how often we reach for sugary processed foods when we're stressed or depleted. It's like a quick fix, but it ultimately leaves us feeling worse in the long run.
Exactly. It's about making choices that support our energy and vitality rather than deplete them. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress, not perfection. Small, consistent changes over time can have a profound impact.
I love that. It's about creating a lifestyle that supports our overall well-being. And in doing so, we create a more fertile ground for whatever we're looking to cultivate, whether it's a baby, a creative project, or simply a deeper sense of inner peace.
Beautifully said. And I think the blog's emphasis on aromatherapy is a great example of how we can incorporate small, pleasurable rituals into our daily lives to support this process.
Yes. It's about finding those little things that bring us joy and make us feel good and incorporating them into our self-care routines. Whether it's diffusing a calming blend of essential oils, enjoying a warm bath with Epsom salts, or spending time in nature, it's about making those moments a priority.
It doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. Even 5 minutes of deep breathing can make a difference. It's about consistency and intentionality. Small steps taken regularly can lead to big shifts over time.
Speaking of shifts, the blog also talks about the role of aura readings in understanding our energy and identifying potential blockages. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Sure, aura readings can provide a fascinating glimpse into our energetic state. They can highlight areas where our energy is flowing freely and areas where it might be stagnant or blocked.
It's like getting a personalized energy map, which can be incredibly helpful in guiding our healing journey. So it can help us understand why we might be experiencing certain emotions or physical symptoms and provide insights into how to address them.
Precisely. Aura readings can be a valuable tool for self-awareness and growth. They can also help us to understand the impact of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors on our energy field.
So if someone is intrigued by this whole chakra thing and wants to learn more, what would you recommend as a next step?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the Auratherapy blog has a wealth of information on chakra balancing aura readings and all things energy healing. They also offer a variety of products, including their Sacral Chakra Balancing Oil Blend.
Awesome. So we've covered a lot of ground here, but one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea that fertility is about so much more than just the physical body.
It's about the mind, the emotions, the spirit, and the energy that flows through and connects all of these aspects of ourselves. It's a holistic perspective that acknowledges the profound interconnectedness of our being.
And that's what I love about this approach. It's not about focusing solely on the physical symptoms, but about addressing the underlying energetic imbalances that might be contributing to the problem.
Exactly. It's about creating harmony and balance within ourselves so that we can manifest our desires with greater ease and joy.
I couldn't agree more. So before we wrap up, I have one final question for you. We've talked about how to balance and awaken our chakras. But is it possible to have too much energy in a particular chakra? Can we overdo it?
That's an excellent question.
Ha.
And it leads us to a very important point about balance. Just as too little energy in a chakra can create imbalance, so too can an excess of energy.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, that state of harmony where energy is flowing freely but not overwhelmingly.
Exactly. It's a delicate dance and one that requires us to be mindful of our energy levels and how different practices and activities affect us.
It's about tuning into our bodies and our intuition, paying attention to those subtle cues and signals they're sending us.
And just like with everything else in life, it's about finding what works for you. What might be energizing for one person might be draining for another.
It's a journey of self-discovery and one that requires us to be curious, open-minded, and willing to experiment.
And remember, it's a process, not a destination. There will be times when we feel balanced and aligned, and times when we feel a bit off-kilter.
The key is to be patient with ourselves, to keep learning, keep exploring, and keep trusting the wisdom of our own bodies.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect note to end on.
It's really amazing how just talking about this stuff for a little while can, really shift your perspective.
It's true. I feel like we've uncovered so many layers of this whole fertility thing.
Yeah, it's not just about the physical act of conceiving.
Right.
It's about so much more.
Exactly. It's about our energy, our emotions, our connection to ourselves and to something bigger.
And that's what I find so empowering about this approach.
Me too. It's like we're taking back control of our fertility journey.
Yeah, and it's not about forcing things to happen.
No, it's about creating the right conditions.
Yeah, nurturing that fertile ground within ourselves.
And trusting that the universe will support us.
And that's where the chakras come in, right?
Exactly. They're like these energetic guides.
Yeah, and by understanding how they work and how to balance them, we can create a more harmonious flow of energy.
And that harmony is what allows us to manifest our desires.
And so if there's one thing that I want our listeners to take away from this deep dive, it's that fertility is a journey. And it's a journey that's unique to each individual.
Definitely.
There's no right or wrong way to do it.
It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. and trusting your own intuition. And so if you're feeling called to explore this whole chakra thing, I encourage you to do it.
Me too. There's so much to discover.
And remember, it's not about being perfect.
No, it's about progress.
Yeah, and it's about self-love and trusting in the divine timing of your journey.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Yeah, me too. And to all of you listening out there, we wish you all the best on your fertility journeys.
And in all your endeavors.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those chakras spinning.